Welcome back to my channel. My name's Coy. Today I've got an iPhone 11 Pro Max that was completely destroyed front and back. I actually did this repair about 2 weeks after I'd done this repair originally for the same customer. I don't know exactly what happened to this phone, but it looks like it got ran over by a car. Now, because we had already done a back glass replacement on this phone a few weeks prior, we didn't have to run it through the laser machine again. You only have to run it through the laser machine on the first time it's repaired. It's a lot easier to remove the broken glass the second time it's repaired. This repair takes a lot less time the second time than it does the first, with a lot less elbow grease when you don't have to use the laser machine. Once we get this back glass cleared away and all the old glue scraped away, we can open up the inside of the phone and remove the screen. Now, one thing about the 11 Pro Max that hadn't been done in previous generations is there are two battery connectors. And you want to make sure you disconnect both battery connectors to make sure you don't fry anything on your board. There are two tri-wing screws on the first battery connector and then 4 down at the bottom on the second battery connector. You move all 4 screws, making sure to make a little pattern out at the bottom of your mat or wherever you're going to work on your workspace, so that your screws don't get mixed up because they're not all the same size. There are 6 more screws up here at the top. This plate here covers your LCD connectors. It also covers your ear speaker Face ID sensor connectors. You want to remove all 6 screws and put the plate and the screws off to the side. Once you get this plate off, get all these screws out and get this plate off, you want to disconnect each of the 3 connectors and take your screen off and put it to the side. And there's our broken screen just a few weeks later. There are 3 more tri-wing screws holding down the Face ID sensor ear speaker assembly. You want to remove all 3 of these tri-wing screws here and set them off to the side. Gently remove this assembly from the old screen to put on the new screen. You want to be careful here. If you damage this assembly, you're going to lose Face ID if you have to replace this assembly. You have a microphone, your Face ID sensor, ambient light sensor, and your Face ID sensor all on one assembly. And if any one of those components gets damaged and has to be replaced, you lose Face ID. So you want to be careful. You're going to start putting your 3 tri-wing screws back in to screw your sensor down to the new screen, and that's pretty much it for transferring the Face ID sensor assembly all to the new screen. All 3 tri-wing screws go back in the original hole from whence they came, and that's pretty much it. Now this is a kind of a tricky part depending on the quality of the screen. I've seen these connectors here become too short and pull away from the screen. I like to use high quality screens because I don't run into that. But yeah, these connectors here, you snap in place. I usually do the top 2 first, and then the bigger connector down at the bottom, do that one next. Once we get this connector here done, we can replace the metal plate that covers these connectors and hold them in place. As you see there, that connector right there can pop up if you're not careful with this short connector on the bottom. But put this metal plate back over the connectors and replace your 6 tri-wing screws. Once those are put in place, that keeps your connectors from popping up off the board. Now you can refasten your battery connectors. I usually start with the one at the top with the 2 tri-wing screws here at the top, or middle I should say. Put those 2 in place, and then I'll work my way to the bottom. It's just easier to do it that way. Do them in the order in which they came. Reconnect your battery connector at the bottom, and then do the 4 tri-wing screws down at the bottom. Hold that plate in place. It can get a little tricky doing it one-handed, and there is a tool that you can use to hold your screen open, and I have that tool, but for some reason I never use it. As we can see, the screen turns on and works fine. This phone was disabled for a few minutes just because it was completely destroyed, and it can cause ghosting on a broken LCD, but we didn't have any touch issues. Once we know that the screen is working, we can go ahead and close the phone back up and turn our attention to the back glass replacement. All the glass has been removed, so the bulk of the work has been done. The screen is put back in place, all the teeth have been snapped in place, and then we just put our pentalobe screws back down at the bottom. as far as mechanical work, everything else is done. We just have to turn our attention to gluing that back glass back in place. There are multiple options you can use for gluing this glue in place. You can use cold press glue with a glue gun, which is what a lot of people would use in this situation, and I have used that in the past. I tend to use B7000 because it's cleaner. It also is cleaner to, it's easier to clean up if you have any spillage or seepage. The cold press glue I didn't get very good results out of, and I got tired of my glue gun tip falling off and making a big mess. It's just easier to use the B7000, and B7000 is a lot easier to come by. You can order it off of Amazon or any place that sells phone parts, whereas cold press glue, I had to kind of search that stuff out, and I could only go certain places with that. I like the convenience of ordering glue on Amazon versus anything else. Now, before you put your back glass on, you do want to test fit this glass before you put the glue down, because if you have any glass remnants, little shards of glass left on your housing, or if you have any glue that's gunked up on there, it can cause your back glass not to fit flush. And you want to make sure your glass fits flush. You don't want to have any chunks or any the glass raised in any specific area or anything like that. If your glass fits flat down, then you can go ahead and put your glue down, and then put your back glass over the camera hole. And then I use rubber bands. I know some people use clamps. I don't like using clamps. Sometimes they fit too tight, and it makes me feel like I'm going to break the phone. So I like to use rubber bands. Rubber bands hold well, and I don't have to worry about breaking that glass. You can use anywhere from 3 to 10 rubber bands. It just depends on how much work you want to put into doing this, and you got to be careful here because you can snap that rubber band on your hand if you pull it too tight. But yeah, it's fairly simple. Just use rubber bands, set a timer for an hour, and let it dry. Once an hour has passed, you can remove your rubber bands, and that's pretty much it. If you like this video, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so you get notified for all the videos. I appreciate you guys watching, and y'all take it easy.